Dr. Josh Axe is in studio, and I'm just going to start it off asking a question that I'm absolutely obsessed with. What is your morning routine? And get as specific and micro as possible.
So I had a mentor. He always said, win the morning, win the day. So I really looked at, hey, what are some of the most important things to me in my life? And for me, it's faith is up there and health is really up there too, and personal growth. And so I start off every morning with a spiritual triathlon. I do sort of three things with that. I spend first 5 minutes saying everything I'm grateful for and sort of in praise. Next 5 minutes I spend reading something. It's typically a Bible or a personal growth book. And then third, I typically will spend some time in prayer meditation. And I do that, and sometimes it's 15 minutes, sometimes it's an hour. But I just spend that time doing that, and I'll tell you, for me, I mean, it is the most profound part of my day, because when I spend time reflecting on what's most important in life, and the world's not about me, it's about me loving and serving others, it changes the way that I go about my entire day. And then typically right after that, I'll make a superfood smoothie. So I throw in some berries. It's almost always blueberries or raspberries, throw in some collagen, maybe a handful of spinach, coconut milk, some herbs, and throw down my smoothie. And then I typically right after that go and do a quick workout. And, and after I do that in the morning, I feel good. I spent time doing those things, and then I'll dive into whatever sort of work I have for the day. But that's how I start my day.
So let's get into you a little bit here. Let's go. We just did your show, which is going to air.
Yeah.
We're super excited. We had a long conversation, but for this one, I said we're going to go in on you now. Let's go way back. Where you grow up? Where's your childhood like? How do we get here?
Yeah, so I grew up in a city called Troy, Ohio, just outside of Dayton, Ohio. Grew up a Buckeye fan, and in growing up, like I had a great family. My parents are awesome, and so I was just sharing this recently. I don't usually always share this on podcasts, but like I had a mom who was a school teacher. She taught special ed and she taught phys ed, and then I had a dad who worked on telephone poles outside in Ohio, and I had a dad who like always told me he was proud of me, never missed a soccer game or track meet or basketball game. So I had really amazing parents. But our family was into fitness a lot. Like we were into athletics and sports, but we knew nothing about nutrition, like absolutely nothing. So something that really, probably the most shocking thing that happened to us throughout my family's history is my mom was 40 years old and she looked really healthy. She was a swim instructor, like looked super fit, but she was diagnosed with breast cancer. And our family lived in what I'll call kind of the medical model. So like my mom and our entire family, if we were sick, we immediately went to the doctor, got prescribed antibiotics or medication, and we just didn't know that there was another way. So when my mom got this diagnosis, she went through all the traditional medical treatment. She had a mastectomy. She went through rounds and rounds and rounds of chemotherapy. I remember one time, like we had my grandmother came in and she was like, you need to say goodbye to your mom because, we don't know if she'll be around. And so like I experienced that as a kid, almost losing my mom and seeing her go through this system. And you know what? Praise God, after going through all those, she eventually was diagnosed as being cancer-free and healthy. But the shocking thing was, after my mom went through all these treatments, she really seemed sicker than ever. My mom was diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome and hypothyroidism, digestive issues. She got put on antidepressant and anti-anxiety medications. So a big part of my memory.
What year is this?
This would have been in, 1995 or so.
Okay.
Yeah, about 1995. And so, 95. And so, so a big part of my mom growing up is like, my mom was one of those moms too, where she worked and she took care of the family. I mean, she put in a lot of hours, but she would have to take naps on the weekends and sometimes during the week, like just try and lay down for an hour because she was just overwhelmed and exhausted all the time. And this went on for 10 years. But one of the things I remember as a kid is seeing my mom like that and thinking to myself, there's got to be a better way. Like, and I don't want to see anyone else go through this because my mom was just almost like I saw her in pain all the time. And I remember at around 14 years old, I didn't know a lot about health. My mom had just gone through that. But I said to myself, I know soda's bad. I don't know how I knew. I did. So literally at 14 years old, I stopped drinking soda. And
Cold turkey.
Cold turkey. And maybe I had it 5 times since then till now. I mean, it was very rare, almost never. And anything I learned was healthy. I just started getting into that. And so then I got turned on to started learning about sort of nutrition. And so in undergrad, I started working as a personal trainer, started reading everything I can about nutrition and diet, and then went on to school and started getting trained in functional medicine and chiropractic and just natural medicine. And a year before I graduated, I was working in a clinic sort of at that time, just about to go up and open my own practice. And I got a call from my mom, and just sobbing on the phone. And she said, they've just diagnosed me with cancer again. This time it's on my lungs. She said, what do I do? And I flew from Florida, where I was in school, back to Ohio. We sat down, talked about it. We prayed together. We just felt really led to take care of her all naturally. And I was really blessed at the time to have some amazing mentors. I mean, I had doctors in integrative and functional medicine who were just amazing. But we decided to take this all natural approach, even though she had her doctor saying, we want to go in and do surgery and radiation in 3 days. We said, hey, give us 4 months. So my mom, we went 4 months and just did everything we could. My mom started juicing vegetables every single day. She started using, reishi mushroom and turmeric every single day. She started getting lymphatic drainage massage with essential oils.
And how does she know to find these things at the time?
Through me.
Through you, okay.
Yeah, so through me. So, and the other thing is my mom, and this is what turned me so on to holistic medicine too, is that my mom also, we found she had a lot of fear and a lot of worry in her life. So we recorded her saying, and again, I know everybody has a different religious perspective, but with her, we recorded her saying Bible verses and doing certain meditations with at the time it was a tape recorder. And so she recorded herself. She listened to every morning when she woke up, every night before bed, and she just kind of changed everything. And after 4 months, we went back to her oncologist. They did a CT scan, and they called us the next day. And her doctor was a female doctor in Columbus, Ohio, and they said their exact words were, "This is highly unusual. We don't typically see this, but your tumor, your largest one, shrunk from 2.5 centimeters down to 1.2. We want to see you get into 9 months." Went back 9 months later, complete remission. So my mom is just, she's about to turn 67. Her and my dad retired from Ohio down to Florida, live on a lake. Like, they water ski. My mom runs 5Ks. Like, my mom says she feels better now in her 60s than she did in her 30s. So, I mean, all those things together really is what fueled me to, start DrAxe.com, which is a content site I do. It's what fueled me to start another company I run that does supplements. And so I just, seeing people's life transform, like, it's what energizes me. It's what gets me excited, because I just know what an impact these things have had on my family and my own, joy in life. And so that's a big part of my story.
So let's say there's someone listening, we'll call her Sally, and she's 35 pounds overweight. So she's not fat. She's just a little bit overweight. And she's on antidepressants. She occasionally takes Xanax. She drinks alcohol on the weekends, maybe on the weekdays sometimes. She goes through the McDonald's drive-thru, and she doesn't drink a lot of water. That
doesn't sound like it's going to end too well.
Well, what do you?
But
this is
there's
a lot of people like this. So,
Okay.
So what are 5 things that you would tell Sally to do that anyone can do at home?
Yeah, I would say number one thing, and I think this is actually a pretty huge step, just change breakfast. I mean, if somebody can just change breakfast, it's a third of their diet. It's a pretty huge deal. So if you can go from, rather than doing the cereal at home or the drive-through, make yourself a smoothie, throw some berries in there, throw some collagen powder in there, throw some almond or coconut milk. Just do that. That alone can have a really big, and I think there's something else to be said about starting your day a certain way. I feel like it almost motivates people, like, man, I started the day off right. I want to keep it going. So of all the things I've recommended over the years, I feel like that little thing for some people has been so transformative. I would say that's one. The second thing, and you said to do at home, this isn't a nutritional thing, change the people you spend time with. I mean, we all know this. You guys have run such an amazing, successful business. You guys have, been so successful in just how you guys look. I can tell you guys are so fit. But like, my biggest life lesson is you become who you surround yourself with. I'm not the first person. There's a million other people that said it beside it. I do, but I found that to be so true. So I would say most people have some leeches in their life that are discouraging them. They're kind of, they're wanting to bring you down. They're wanting to see you fail. You got to be around people that are encouragers. And here's the thing. You got to be proactive about it. One of the things, Lauren, you talked about when I was, talking to you earlier, I asked you why you guys were so successful. And one of the things was be strategic. That's another thing. Like, be strategic about who you spend time with. Be strategic about what you're eating and saying, I'm going to start doing this every single day. So that'd probably be number 3 thing, is just be strategic. Number 4 is you don't have to do CrossFit or a hour-and-a-half yoga class and have perfect balance. Like, just move, walk during lunch, or find out whatever type of workout it is. I don't care if it's cardio or weightlifting or indoor rock climbing or just walking trails outside, but just start moving on a regular basis, I think, would be the next thing. And I could say loads of other things, but I think those are pretty good places for most people to start.
So I want to ask you this, and this may be an ignorant question. So you describe yourself as a certified doctor of natural medicine. So
Sure.
what would be the difference between like my general physician? Because I think people should understand this, and me as well.
Yeah. So I think, there are different ways to look at things. Our current medical system, and again, I always go to, and I talk about the root, get into the root cause. Like, why does somebody say that the things they do? Well, sometimes it's because, their dad never, like I just watched this Elton John movie and I'm like looking at like his dad never hugged him or told him he loved him or told me, like I had a dad who told me he was proud of me. Like I feel like I'm self-confident, but I'm humble because my dad taught me those things. Like, so all that being said, I know that might seem a little off, but like off track, but I say the same thing. Like I look at, okay, why does a doctor teach or prescribe drugs? Well, pharmaceutical companies are what fund the schools, and it's just, that's why they're recommending it a lot of times. And also everything they're doing, it's Greek. Our medical system is Greek. It's in nature. Well, Greeks look at things and always looked at things. It's based on everything is black and white and nothing is holistic. Everything is separated and isolated. So if you have a doctor of a conventional MD today, they'll tend to say you have hypothyroidism. I'm going to prescribe Synthroid to change your hormone markers because they correlate health with being a marker of your hormones. Now, if you go back to ancient Chinese and Ayurvedic medicine, which is what I personally practice, I'm really looking at things holistically and I'm saying, okay, why is that thyroid off? And according to Chinese medicine, they'll say, well, you have low qi and low yang, which is essentially your adrenals are completely worn down. And so we have to pump up your adrenal battery, which is going to help your thyroid in a major way. And so you do that by unplugging more and working less. You do it by reducing stress. You do it by specific foods in your diet that really strengthen those. So it's foods that are really dark in nature. It's blueberries, it's seaweed, it's mushrooms. Like those things are really energizing to that part of the body. It's certain herbs like ashwagandha is amazing for the thyroid. Ginseng and some others. And so, and the other thing is a lot of doctors today are saying, okay, it's just a thyroid issue. A lot of times though, it's autoimmune in nature and it's actually Hashimoto's thyroiditis. So then it's like, we got to repair the adrenals and the gut, and so we need to start doing more bone broth. We need to get the foods that cause inflammation of the gut. So we got to calm inflammation. We got to dry up candida. So Chinese medicine looks at the body this way. It's all about changing your environment. Now, what conventional medicine says is, oh, you've got a parasite or a bad bacteria. We're trying to kill that. Chinese medicine says, no. You don't kill it with a supplement or a medication. Your body kills it itself. When your body is strong and robust, you can fight. Your body will fight off the virus. Your body will fight off the Lyme disease. Your body will fight off these things. So the way that they look at it is, your body internally is either too hot or too cold, too damp or too dry, too much movement called wind, too little movement called stagnation. And there are these other two things called yin and yang, which essentially yin is feminine hormones, yang is masculine, and then qi, which is your body's adrenal, your overall energy. But like, why do we call it a cold today? That comes from Chinese medicine. It's your body is cold internally. So every ancient prescription for overcoming a cold is a warming herb or spice. It's ginger. It's cayenne pepper, it's garlic, it's oregano oil. These are things that are very warming. So if you're sick in China, like, sorry to hog the whole conversation.
No, I want you to.
No. This is so interesting.
But last thing I'll say, like when I was a kid, I'd be surprised if everyone listening right now, if they don't like raise their hand, whether you're in the car, at your home, or wherever. But like when I was a kid, my mom always gave me, when I was sick, chicken noodle soup and ginger ale. And if they didn't have ginger ale, she gave me 7-Up, which I guess that's a
Why
good
did they do that
replacement.
back then? They did the same thing for me.
So in ancient China, the recipe for healing a cold was chicken broth soup, which is vegetables and chicken broth, and ginger herbal tea. Why? Well, ginger herbal tea is a warming, and by the way, they're the same color, chicken broth and ginger. That light yellow color is indicative of boosting your they're immune boosting foods. And so again, you're warming and reducing inflammation, boosting the immune system with ginger. Chicken broth has very specific amino acids that repairs the gut because 70% of your immune system's in the gut, so it strengthens. So there are things today that people don't even realize. Hey, why do we stick out our tongue when we go to the doctor? Well, now today they're just looking at your tonsils, but for thousands of years, Chinese medicine doctors will look at your tongue, and I can look at someone's tongue today,
color.
And you can look at the color, you can look at the coating, you can look at
How's
the
my
ridges.
tongue?
Let me see it. It's actually pretty good. You got a little bit of ridges. See where it's coming up on the sides a little bit. That tends to be indicative of your liver is working pretty hard. And when you're pregnant, your liver and spleen are working a little bit overtime, trying to, especially early on, create a placenta and do other things. Your liver and spleen are so responsible for blood. And so that's why that looks like the way it does.
Are you sure it's not like detoxing all the alcohol that I had before I was pregnant?
Wow. I mean, if you really want to get some reactions right now, it's just, before. I thought you said.
Don't freak out, pregnancy police. Before. How's Michael's tongue?
See, his tongue is quivering. It means he's putting a lot of out. He's overthinking.
Well,
he's constantly thinking all the time.
This is really interesting that you just said that, and this plays off of what you were just talking about. So Michael the other day had 5 cups of coffee, and his adrenals were shot, which is maybe why the tongue is shaking.
This week has been
a stressful week.
Well, I wouldn't say stressful. It's
a lot.
It's a really busy week.
So here's the funny thing. So in Chinese medicine, you have 5 different elements. So Chinese medicine had the first ever. It was them or Ayurveda, very close. Ayurveda has the doshas. Chinese medicine has the elements. But it was essentially the first like Enneagram or disc profile. But what Chinese medicine did is they said, okay, it's not only your personality that correlates with what diseases you're most at risk for. I mean, so many things. So you're a wood element, which means you're a visionary, big time. You're a leader. And
how do we know what element I am?
You're a bit wiry, just the way your body is.
Okay.
I mean, I'm a wood element too.
He told you he's not attached to food. He eats to live. Like he's drinking coffee all day.
Well, the way and again, we haven't met before this, but what he's always thinking is, I want to get from point A to point B. What's the best way to do that? So even when he's thinking about eating, he's thinking he is such a futuristic thinker and thinking about how do I, and he's very strategic. He's a planner. But yeah, that's
are you sure you've never met him?
Pretty much nailed it.
But here's my question. So he had 5 cups of coffee. He came home.
No, you keep saying that. You exaggerate.
Okay.
Listen,
Tell him what it really was.
I'll do a tangent.
Okay.
If I get a paper cut, Lauren will pick up the phone and call my mother and say my arm is gone.
Okay.
You have to understand. I had a cup of coffee and a shot of espresso, but the problem is that I was also.
You had a Spark.
I like this energy
Spark,
thing.
An
I went to the
Spark.
gym. No,
Okay.
So 4 energy
So
drinks.
it was a lot. So this is my question. He came home. His adrenals were shot. How could he have repaired that at that instance? Is there something he could have taken?
So going back to this, the reason that I brought this up earlier too is that hold on, what were we talking about?
Adrenals.
No, but what were you saying before? The first thing that
How
got me
he's
on.
a planner.
No, it was even before that.
Chinese medicine,
we were
hot
talking
and
about
cold.
the wood elements. What was I saying before?
Maybe.
Oh no, so you were saying I wasn't stressed. That's exactly what a wood element would say. Because what elements think I'm not stressed. Yet and I was like this because I was like because wood elements, they don't worry. They don't have anxiety. They're like, something burns down just as long as the family's okay.
I'm push it down deep. I bury it in there.
So that's exactly. But for him, what stresses him is not unplugging. So he'll never be stressed in the idea of being worried. He doesn't worry. He's not going to have anxiety. He's going to. His problem is he correlates that with being stressed. Stress is not for him. It's being on too much. His brain is always going, always thinking, overanalyzing. And a lot of times people are wired too. What elements to? A lot of people are like this. Like they feel guilty or feel like they're being lazy if they're not working and doing something. And you may not be like that at all. There are, but I would say the big thing is you got to unplug and do nothing sometimes. Like and it's so hard for people that are achievers and visionaries because their whole thing is they want to move forward. And when you're doing nothing, you're not moving forward. But I'd say that's the big.
I have to actively unplug. Like the way I do that, and we talked about a little bit on your shows. I'll sit down and I'll have to read something that has nothing to do with if I read a great historical biography, it's like I go to a different time. I'm sitting there. I can't do anything. But I have to actively do it. Where I get in trouble is if I'm just trying to sit. Meditation doesn't work so well for me. I've tried it. I probably can go and take some courses and learn a little bit more, but I have a difficult time.
You're never going to do well with that. It's because you're not moving. That's the other thing. They say wood elements need to move. Mm-hmm. So you're better off walking through the woods.
Yeah, taking walks really helps me. I do that. Read, sit down. I have to be I don't want to say actively doing something, but I can't just sit still. And I don't know how to correlate that. When I was younger, I used to get in all sorts of trouble, and it was putting me in detentions. And I'm wondering if that messed me up a little bit too, because I don't want to be isolated and just sitting there doing nothing. It's not necessarily about me feeling bad about not achieving or being active. I just have a really difficult time sitting still and not doing something.
Yeah, totally. So I think for you, just putting it in your daily rhythm, like you know this about yourself, like you got to schedule time to read books that you love that don't have to do with building a business, whether it's history or something else. It's fantastic. And then getting in nature, what elements like to be like? There's a practice. It's actually way older than this, but they started in the 1980s, and it's called forest bathing. Now, Japan actually has done all this research and studies. I'm talking about crazy hundreds of thousands of dollars into research on forest bathing, proving its benefits. So it's similar. It's not just grounding. It's going out in the woods and just walking or sitting. And you guys have probably heard of things like holosync, certain frequencies, theta waves, beta, and how that affects your either focus or calming. The ocean and the trees and even insects give off certain waves. So that's why you ever go out and you just stand on the beach by the ocean, you hear that waves crashing. There is something, and it literally just drops your cortisol and just soothes you. It's because of these waves, and your body's energies literally gets in tune with those. But the forest is the same thing. And for wood elements specifically, these are people that are visionaries and leaders. It's so important that they spend time in nature, in the woods. And
it's so funny that you say that. And I told Lauren this the other day, like ever since we moved to LA, because we were in San Diego before, a little bit more space.
Yeah.
And I'm up here, and in a weird thing, I was like, I want to go to Santa Fe, New Mexico. I've never been there. Don't know anything about it. I'm just looking at pictures, and I want to get out into the middle of nowhere, away from everything. I don't know where that is or where I should go. Maybe you might know. But I'm like being drawn to something in nature.
Let's
I've never
go
been
to
like that before.
Joshua Tree and do mushrooms when I'm not pregnant.
That's fine too, but I don't know if it's even. I just want to, you know what I'm saying? I just want to get out into the middle of nowhere because I'm just.
Getting you to walk on the beach though. This is so interesting. Is like pulling a tooth. It's so hard, but then when I get you on the beach, you love it. It's the getting you there, and that's maybe the wood element in you. I'm gonna start using that word.
Weird.
Yeah, and everybody can read about this, what element you are. By the way, I'm pretty sure what element you are.
What?
Lauren. I think you're a fire, but I'm not totally sure.
What is a fire?
A fire they're kind of the life of the party. They are.
I'll take it.
They love being around people. Now, wood elements are the second most introverted. You're not an introvert. Like you get around people because, hey, you can, and sometimes it's to achieve a purpose. Fire elements are much more like, hey, let's get the party, let's get it going. Like you're kind of the social influencer of all these people too, bringing them together. And here's the other thing, some of it's about being in or out of balance. If a fire element is in balance, like great leadership, great at being magnetic, like attracting people. If they get out of balance though, they can be known as dramatic. If they're out of balance, that's the biggest thing.
I would say that's a good way. Dramatic is a very good way to describe her.
Yeah.
Like I said, paper cut, arm gone.
So our baby's going to be a mix of a fire and a wood.
Yes. Well, no. I mean, your baby more likely will be a fire or a wood, but they could be some of the. And I'll cover the others just real quick. So the others are an earth element. So if you know anybody, earth elements their body types are a little bit more round in nature. They're like golden retrievers if they would be dogs. You know what I'm saying? They're just loving. They're friendly. They're supporters. Naturally, they're very supporting of others, like Santa Claus. But it's they just want to support you. And the emotion that they experience when they're out of balance is worry, and that's associated with upper GI issues. So all this is associated with which diseases you're most prone to, because earth elements are prone to diabetes, putting on weight. Like stomach and upper GI issues. Like fire elements like you are more prone to anxiety and like a more of a sympathetic state, like almost a nervous anxiety if they get really out of balance. Wood elements are more associated with the emotions of impatience, frustration, and if they get super out of balance, it can be anger, but more often it's frustration and patience. And so for them, that's liver, gallbladder. And so it's really important to do everything you can to like support those organs. Metal elements are people that are very black and white. Everything in life is black and white. They're very systematic about everything. They're always thinking about is this right or is it wrong? And they're associated with the immune system, which is lungs and colon. And then we have the water element. Water element is the most, like my wife Chelsea's a water element. Water element is the most introverted. Whereas fire and earth are the most extroverted. metals can be pretty extroverted too sometimes. But water elements are more like it's associated with your reproductive organs and your adrenals. And the emotion they can experience that's negative is fear. And so the emotion, and think about this, fear in the adrenals, but also fear affects the reproductive organs. So like if a woman is struggling with major fear in her life, maybe it's fear of failure, fear of disappointing her parents or someone else, it can cause infertility. It can cause it can cause all these hormonal issues. So
how do they combat that?
So what I recommend is, and there's different things. I think a lot of it goes back to, so let me say this. So like Chelsea, if my wife is having fear, the biggest thing that we'll do together is we'll say, okay, what are you fearful about? Okay, I'm fear about disappointing this person. Because this actually, my wife right now is doing a photo, like a big thing in Denver right now for this magazine, and it's really one of her first times doing something sort of this on it's a really large scale. And so before, just with her anxiety, I'm like, the biggest thing, I'm like, what's the worst that can happen? They won't like it. Okay, how's that going to affect our lives if they don't? It's not like, it's going through and really saying, at first it's addressing what are you actually fearful of and recognizing that it's there. And the other thing is just knowing, like for us, again, I know everybody has different religious beliefs. For us, like we really, really believe like God is on our side. Like he created us for a purpose. He wants us to win and succeed. And so we're prayerful about things. We also prepare for things and know, hey, all we can do is do our best. And I tell her, I said, babe, you know what? No matter what, I love you. I'm proud of you. I'm just so proud of who you are and your character. And so anyways, all that being said, I think a big part of it is if somebody is having those things, like my mom, she meditated on Bible verses. For another person, maybe it's an ancient meditation from, I don't know, the Dalai Lama or Solomon or someone else. It could be anything. But I think, and I think also putting you in a position where you're not dwelling on those things and you're doing the opposite emotion. So if somebody is really depressed, they need to focus on being joyful. Like Mother Teresa said, we were talking about this earlier, like a lot of people who are overcoming depression, all they do, they're thinking about themselves constantly. And versus when you shift your focus to others and start thinking about how can I bless others and improve their life. And there's multiple medical studies on showing one of the top ways to beat depression, probably the number one way, is to actually serve and love others.
I used to call my grandma depressed in high school. I used to complain to her, and she'd say, Lauren, get outside yourself. And every time I feel any kind of anxiety or depression, I'm like, I'm focused too much inward. I need to go outward.
Yeah.
And it does help so much.
Yeah.
I want to talk about a little, there's two things I want to talk about with Chinese medicine. First thing is weight loss, and the second thing, and maybe this one comes before, is gut health.
Sure. Tell
me a little bit about what the Chinese believe when it comes to weight loss and then when it comes to gut health.
So in China, again, it's all about, so a Chinese medicine doctor would say, I'm not worried about your weight loss. I'm not as worried about gut health. It's all about, I'm going to feel your pulse. I'm going to look at your tongue. I'm going to look at your face and see what's going on. And then by extension, it's going to help everything. It's going to help every area of your health. And I will address this in 1 second. So anyway, that's the first thing they're going to do. They're going to say, we need to fix these emotions. We need to fix your diet. We need to implement some things in your lifestyle and work on all these things. Because if your body's really damp, like dampness is what we call candida today, or mucus. Like if you have snot, phlegm, coatings on your tongue, mucus, that's all, it's wet, it's very wet, it's damp. And so in Chinese medicine, like they know that the environment, like today, like we had flooding terribly in Nashville a few years ago. And I had all these patients coming in afterwards with mold toxicity. Like it was so bad because mold was growing in their basements. In order for mold to grow, it has to be damp. If it's really dry, mold doesn't grow. Same thing in your body. If your body's really damp, candida, parasites, Lyme is so much worse, Lyme disease, all these different things. But if we can dry up, so the way you dry up dampness in Chinese medicine is bitter foods. We can almost know, it's like all sweet and salty today, but if you start implementing really bitter foods, which is a lot of herbs and especially things like astragalus and others. So I would say...
What else? Give us some, I don't know what astragalus is. What is that?
Astragalus is probably one of the top 7 herbs prescribed in Chinese medicine.
Where can I get some astragalus, and can I take it when I'm pregnant?
Yeah, and that's borderline. I think anyone in Asia would say yes. A lot of people in Western society, because they're uncomfortable with it and there's no studies, would say no to
Okay, so how do I
astragalus.
get astragalus in Michael's diet? Like, where do I find some astragalus?
So astragalus, every health food store in the country is going to have astragalus. You can do it as a tea,
Okay.
or you can do it as a capsule. So I would say, and that goes to digestion. Like, you want to strengthen your digestive system, astragalus is the #1 herb to strengthen your digestive system.
I'm going to roofie you with that.
Yeah.
Sounds like I want it.
After that, probably we're really know that ginger is great for warming and reducing inflammation in your gut. To get rid of candida, pau d'arco is probably one of the most powerful herbs. Pau d'arco is really, it's known as an anti-parasite in Western medicine, but it's also a good anti-fungal, anti-candida. It's very, very good.
Hold on 1 second. Is it pal d'arco? Is that, how do you consume something? I don't even know what that is.
Yeah, it's a tea.
It's a tea. Okay.
And you can do it in capsule form. There's capsules too, but
Okay.
it's funny. Like in ancient China, like medicine was tea. I mean, that's how they did everything. It's like, hey, here's a bunch of these things. I want you to throw it in a pot, boil it, and then just drink it 3 times a day. And that's how they did their medicine historically.
I'm going to make our producer Taylor some Pal d'Arco with his hot dog that he's having for lunch.
There you go.
And his jalapeno Hawaiian chips.
It's awesome.
Okay, so Pal d'Arco, how do you say the first one again?
PAU space DARCO, and then the other one was astragalus.
Astragalus, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So
those are things.
Great for gut. For weight loss, again, they're not. It's just not something they're going to. You'll just lose weight if you eat the way they tell you to. You're going to lose weight, but they'll.
What's the way they tell you to?
So it really everything's personalized. A wood element eats a little different than a fire element, eats a little different than a metal element, but everyone eats seasonally. That's the first thing. You're eating seasonally, foods that are in season, you're eating real food, and you're stopping when you're 80% full. That's the other rule. And in Japan, they still practice it today. Actually, a lot of them have a saying when they sit down, and it's, I don't know the exact how to say it in Japanese, but it's, we eat until we're 80% full.
That is so interesting that that's a saying in Japan, because Michael's a 4th Japanese. His mom's a half.
Oh, wow.
And both of them have.
Can't tell.
No, both of them have that mentality naturally, which is so interesting.
Well, like that was the example. My grandmother was full Japanese, right? And so she always ate like that, and a lot of ginger, like whole. And then my mom, like same thing. Like it was very much like it was never like we talked about this on your show. I never am eating to excess. I get a little full, and I'm like, okay.
It's the most interesting science experiment as his wife, because like if I'm eating brownies, like I'll maybe have 1 too many brownies. He will just stop when he's not hungry, and I've watched it over and over. I've never heard him say, I'm craving this. The only time I've ever heard him say that is when his body's lacking the nutrients. So for instance, like he got surgery and he said to me, I'm craving a steak, and that's probably because he needed iron.
Yeah.
Like for the first,
awesome.
and I knew like my body was telling me I wanted meat. Like I wanted red meat specifically. It wasn't like I wanted chicken or turkey. I wanted a steak, and that's rare for me. But no, I think I get a lot of shit because sometimes I try to work out consistently, but I'll take a break, or sometimes I'll eat bad. But if you look at if you just kind of judged me through a year's period of time, I'm pretty like on a chart. It would be pretty consistent.
You could eat more vegetables. Let's be honest.
It would be a pretty even
Palo
line.
d'Arco.
You know what I mean? Like a lot of people have these spikes where like I'm gonna get in really good shape, and so during that few weeks, like I'm gonna only eat chicken and broccoli and all these great things. I'm gonna work out every day, and they spike. And then what happens is like they let it go, and then they start drinking again, and they eat really bad, and they drop. For me, if you looked, it's like on a chart over my life, it's probably a pretty straight line.
So you say in Japan they say eat until you're 80% full.
Well, and here's another thing that's interesting, especially in Asia, India, the Middle East, is they understand the energetics of food. Like why, like I just came from Air One and I had sushi. Why every time you have sushi do they give ginger with it? Is it for taste? No, it's because sushi is a cooling food because it's raw. You have raw fish, you have seaweed, which is cooling. Ginger is warming. It's always to balance it out. And so it's just interesting. Like these ancient physicians in Ayurvedic and Chinese medicine, it wasn't the food that was medicine per se. It was the meals that were medicine. They knew that like we're going to combine a warming food with a cooling food with an anti-inflammatory food, a food that helps move things through your system. And like certain times of year, certain organs are more need to be strengthened more. So in the fall, now there are some healthy things that we carry over, but in the fall, we should be eating orange foods, sweet potatoes, pumpkin, because it strengthens your spleen. That's when your spleen and your stomach and your pancreas are the strongest those times of year, versus in the spring is when your liver's the strongest. So March and April especially, you should be doing green apples and juicing vegetables and wheatgrass shots and all that type of stuff.
My body right now being pregnant is so intuitive. Like I can just like
Oh, yeah.
if I'll have like I told him I used to have 2 huge cups of coffee, and now I'll have a coffee in the morning, but I'll only want like 3 sips.
Yeah.
So it's like telling me when to stop. And right now I've had this huge kick for butternut squash soup. I haven't even told you this.
Yeah.
And that's interesting that you say it's because it's the fall. Like maybe that's my body telling me I want that right now because it's the fall, or no?
Well, totally, absolutely, and especially when women are pregnant, there's the organs they need to strengthen. It depends on the female, but sometimes it's now with conception it tends to be your adrenal reproductive organs, but for carrying a baby, it's your pancreas, spleen. So it's that element. It's called the earth element. And so that's going to be the butternut squash. It's all of these foods that strengthen those organs. And sometimes women will crave like things that are like pickles or things that are sour, and that's because that's liver. It's your liver saying, I need something. And your body is the most in tune when you're pregnant. Here's something else. I mentioned you guys are different elements. Anytime a woman has a child, for that time being especially, they shift to being whatever element they are, a little more earth. Everyone's all of 5 elements. Sometimes people are kind of 2, but it's like you just naturally, when you become more nurturing, more thoughtful, you start becoming more like a mother henish, more protective.
I also am. I keep feeling like this is so weird. Like psychic, clairvoyant. Like I'm seeing things that I wouldn't have seen.
Yep.
I don't know if that's because I don't have wine in my system. But I'm like, I have a lot of clarity, and I'm guessing things that I wouldn't have guessed. Like my intuition is off the charts. Is that normal?
Yeah, absolutely, for sure.
Okay. I kind of want to talk about pregnancy a little bit, just selfishly, if that's okay.
Let's do it.
Okay. First of all, we kind of talked about this on your podcast, but I want to talk about it on ours too. Should I get a flu shot?
Again, my opinion is always this. I look at our medical system and who is driving this thing, and it's pharmaceutical companies. And one thing that I'll tell you, and I'm trying to be right now completely non-biased. If I'm a person stepping in and researching, knowing nothing about a medical system and saying, who is coming up with this information that you need anything, this certain medication for this disease or this, and looking that all of the corruption in the past, Vioxx killed almost 100,000 people. Like some of these medications killed tens of thousands of people. They were approved and on the market, eventually taken off. There are medications taken off the market every single month because they've killed thousands to 10 to sometimes hundreds of thousands. So all that saying, if I'm coming in and looking at, is this safe and effective and who's funding it? Number one, this is it's completely a money-making industry. Not that all industry's not, but I'm saying I'm knowing that. I think it's important to know that. The other thing is thinking about the number one goal here is to get healthy. And I know this for certain, and this is ancient medicine of all types, that if you're going to stay healthy, we need to strengthen your body. We got to build your immune system. Flu shots don't build your immune system, okay? They cause your body to actually act in an inflammatory way. It's a whole long term. It's not the best thing. But that being said, how do we strengthen our immune systems? Well, it's nutrients like zinc is very immune building. Vitamin D, tons of medical research,
if
super
this
immune
is
building.
in my
Vitamin
prenatal,
C.
is that okay? I take a prenatal with those in it, or would you take it on top, like more zinc on top of the prenatal?
Well, I think it would matter if you have a cold or flu, and it's hard to tell. Like our medical systems today, like our when you go into a physician today, they should probably do what's called a micronutrient test. It's what all functional medicine doctors do and integrative medical doctors. They're not just testing what's your cholesterol and there are tests today. Probably they're about $500. Some of them might be more like $200. They can test every single vitamin and mineral you're deficient in, so you know exactly what to take. It's called.
Should I do that?
I have done that. I'm low on D3, so I
Do
should
you
be.
know Next Health? You know the guys over there? Do they do it?
They might.
I bet you they do.
I mean, a lot of people are doing. I mean, a lot more now.
Okay,
A lot more.
that's good advice to go get your blood all tested to see the vitamins. I personally don't want to get a flu shot. I just have noticed that the medical industry is very pushy about it. So I'm the type of person that likes to hear a bunch of different opinions and then come to my own conclusion. And right now I'm at the conclusion that I'm not going to get one. So if anyone has any info on that and you're listening.
Oh, I'm sure lots of people. Listen, I know right now there's some people that are like, bravo, Dr. Axe, I agree with you. There's some that are livid and saying, I can't believe he'd say this. Because here's the other thing to remember. When it comes about health, especially your kids' health, if somebody says when somebody is doing something that maybe they just got a flu shot and they feel like it's bad for their body, or maybe they give it to their kids, there's something within people that says, I don't want to be wrong, and so people will really lash out about it. So I'm sure it could be all over the place. But again, my experience is like the healthiest people. Here's the thing I'll tell you: the 100 healthiest people that I know don't get shot. They don't get flu shots. I mean, they do what I'm talking about. They're like, I'm going to eat more goji berries, and I'm going to go and do a yoga class, and I'm going to use food as medicine instead.
I'm going to agree with you, and I think if anyone has a problem with this conversation and they're lashing out, like it's my body and I get to choose what I want to do, and I think everyone has that choice on themselves. They have to be their own guru and go do their own research.
Yeah.
Let's take it into another direction here. So I would probably end up on the spectrum of like, I know that I could be healthier, talk to guys like you and figure out how I can do that and figure out like what is actually applicable.
Yeah.
And then there's the people on the very far side of the spectrum that are freakishly thinking they're doing all of these different health things. But what I've also seen with some of these people, and I won't name names, they also tend to be some of the sickest people I've ever seen.
Sure,
like what happens in scenarios like that when someone's like an all natural or a medical person that's practicing all of these different health trends we talked about on your show, but they're always sick? Like that's what I also want to dive into that a little bit.
Yeah. So here's the thing that I found in working with thousands and thousands of patients in the past, and then today just working with, giving health advice, is that those people that you're talking about, maybe they're doing the diet right. Sometimes they're still not. Mm-hmm. Like for instance, if somebody has inflammatory bowel disease and they're juicing vegetables and eating salads and thinking they're doing right, it's the worst thing you can do with inflammatory bowel disease. You need to be doing soups and broths and little things, versus if somebody's eating all keto or paleo, but they have liver disease. No, that's the worst. So I think a lot of times people think they're doing it right, but it's not right for them. That's the thing. Like we need to get into personalized and customized nutrition. We're moving more into that, our entire medical system. But historically, Ayurveda and Chinese medicine were all about, no, your diet should be different than your diet, should be different than my diet. Everybody has a specific, unique diet for them. And anyways, so I think that's one thing to consider. The second half is this: emotions and your memories and your thoughts affect your health equally or more than the diet you eat. Why is it that somebody can, one person has high blood pressure and another one doesn't? Blood pressure is one specific example of, that's all emotion. I mean, that's a little diet. That's definitely more emotional. Most conditions, there's an emotional component. As I mentioned earlier, the emotions of fear is going to affect your reproductive system. The emotion of frustration, anger, your liver. Grief and depression affects your immune system. I'll give you an example. Like I had a mom who, I put her on a diet. It was super healthy. It was one of the perfect diets to help heal Crohn's and colitis, like the inflammatory bowel disease. And she got like 50% better, but didn't get all the way better. And we went back and we found this. I started asking her questions. We found her daughter moved away 2 years ago. Her daughter was her best friend. Her daughter moved to college. Didn't talk. She literally was still grieving the loss of her daughter 2 years later. Those sort of things we have in our life, these traumas, these emotions we experience, will affect our health just as much or more than eating gluten or ice cream with all this casein and dairy and everything else. And so that's the thing I would say is a lot of those people. The other thing is they overthink, like they become obsessive with the way they eat, and they think. The emotion of being obsessive completely taxes your digestive system. Obsessiveness is the hardest emotion in your digestive system. So these people are like, did I eat this right? Did I do this? They literally become so that they don't realize they're actually in this vicious cycle that they could eat perfectly. They will never get better because of these emotions that they're experiencing.
That makes sense. It's like when you give something too much energy, you actually end up like making it go away, like towards a person. So energy if you're obsessed with something and it's all you think about, you're giving it so much energy. Whereas if you just don't think about it and stop when you're 80% full, like Michael.
So I know this is and I think this is extremely smart to talk about individualized medicine and basically studying your body and not basically blanket statement saying, hey, this works for everybody. But when, say, someone like me comes to see you and I'm like, hey, I haven't been feeling that good. I'm feeling fine right now. But where do these people start? Like, how do you dumb it down and say, okay, let's analyze this for a minute and say, okay, you're not feeling well. Like, where do you begin? I think that's a lot of people. They don't know who to go see. They don't know when. They don't know what the conversation is. There's too much input almost.
Yeah, and I do want to say, like, I'm not in practice anymore. I ran my practice, and now I run my, supplement company and nutrition company and other things. But I would say this is that first off, try and find a physician or a practitioner of some type that can help you on your journey, or discover yourself and don't become obsessive, but start with some type of a plan. So write down, what are you going to eat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner? And eat the best you can for those meals, and then work on building positive emotions. Those are the two things. And so I would say, recognize if you have worry in your life, work on peace, just being carefree. How do you do that? Think about the times in your life when you've had the most peace. Or is there somebody that you can do, like somebody you just love being around when you're with them, the time goes? Is there a hobby you can do? Maybe it's indoor rock climbing or swimming or anything else, walking around the mall. I don't know. I mean, whatever it is that builds peace in your life, write all those things down, figure out these areas that are causing you to have the anxiety and worry, and do everything you can to move those off your plate. But I'd say that combination of being strategic about breakfast, lunch, dinner, just what you eat. If you fall off track, it's okay. Just jump back on, and then work on combating that negative emotion. Like if you are a person that struggles with depression, anxiety, depression is a lot of times thinking about things that it's dwelling on the past. You need to start thinking about the now and the future, just completely let that go. And then you also need to build joy. What makes you joyful? Like for me, I think if I sing, that's kind of a thing that makes, like a happy song that makes me joyful. Stop watching every dark show on television, start watching comedies and whatever. Anything you can do to start building joy. Get around people that just make you laugh till you hurt. If you have anyone like that in your life, get around those people.
It sounds like it's like crowd out the bad. Like instead of
yes.
taking away from your diet, crowd it out with just add more
1000%.
vegetables. Add more joy is what you're saying.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, clinically speaking, and from studies will show you every time crowding out will work 1,000 times more than telling people you can't have that, you can't do that.
I agree.
It never works.
I agree. What are 3 superfoods that you recommend?
Oh man, bone broth number 1. I mean, for me personally,
I feel really proud that I'm drinking a bone broth right now.
You should.
That's what these are, yeah.
I ordered it before you came in, or I would have gotten you one.
All good. I actually had a bunch of collagen before I came, and I do like a bone broth protein powder in a smoothie every morning. So whether it's bone broth protein or it's you make bone broth at home or you buy it frozen or
is there a brand you really like?
Where is this
He has bone broth, don't you?
I have a bone broth it's a bone broth powder you can add to a smoothie.
I have some at the office that we've been having. I'll bring it home for you to try.
Keep all the good stuff away from me.
The Osso, what is that?
So this is
good.
Oh so good, and you get a it's like a cup of coffee that it looks like, and it comes to you, but it's bone broth in the coffee cup. And then they also have a collagen bone broth chocolate banana smoothie that I'm eating, and I felt 100% better after just drinking these. I was feeling low on energy,
great.
so that makes sense.
Is there a brand you really like of bone broth?
I think ours is great.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really about the only one too. And we did it because when I took care of patients in the past, I wanted them all drinking bone broth because it's probably the most important superfood we're missing in our diet. So we were able to put it in a protein to get to people. So anyways, but that's one. Number 2, I would say herbs and spices, just generally, if you look at our herb and spice consumption in Americans in our households, we don't use very many herbs and spices. You go over to the Middle East, India, and Asia, the supermarket, you go, it smells like food. Here it smells like bleach or nothing. We should be using more. When we use food as medicine, it's most true for herbs and spices. Turmeric and cinnamon are way more nutrient dense than broccoli or spinach. I'm not to say you should eat broccoli or spinach, but they're even more nutrient dense. So that'd be number 2. And
cinnamon in the coffee every day, Michael.
There you go.
Okay, sorry. I just have to make sure he's taking notes of this in his brain for later.
Sometimes when you say it, it kind of just goes out.
No, it helps. He'll be doing cinnamon. Go ahead.
Oh man, this is tough. Number 3 for me, those are always my top 2. Number 3 just depends on the person. Some people probiotic-rich foods like sauerkraut. Some people antioxidants are really needed. So a goji berry or blueberries or something. And for some people, it's omega-3s are really big for some people. So salmon or walnuts or flax seeds can be important. So I would say the biggest though, definitely it's bone broth, and then it's the herbs and spices, and then, I mean, you can't go wrong with vegetables. But can I say something, because I know we're running out of time? One other thing you mentioned earlier is the sort of your energy, letting energy go somewhere. there's also something about a balance of energy in the body. Like a lot of us live in this sympathetic state, this fight or flight response. So think about this, like when you go out and run, you look like, I know you guys work out a lot. If you guys would go out and run 5 miles right now, you couldn't eat a cheeseburger in the middle of your run.
No.
The reason is your body sends energy and blood flow. Your body sends all the blood flow to your brain and extremities because it's like, I'm fighting or I'm flying right now. Like you're in that state. And so your digestive system isn't able to digest food because it has no energy. So it would just chuck it up, right? Well, people live in that state all day. Blue light from their phones and emergencies like at work and in their family. And traffic jams. Hey, we're in LA. I got to try and
text message notifications, DMs, Instagrams, comments, emails.
All those things alert your body. It's alerting your body's. Yeah. And so what happens is a lot of us, our digestive systems are so poor because your body operates on a spectrum: protection, which is fight or flight, or regeneration and healing. So again, the more we can put ourselves in a state, when you eat, chew 30 times. Don't be on your phone or TV. Just you'll practice this. Have your computer open and be on your iPhone while you're eating, and then shut them both off, take a few deep breaths, and then eat, and see how it literally changes your entire physiology and the way you operate. I mean, it is. The other is like, why do we do deep breathing? Like, we don't breathe anymore when we exercise. Like, what do they do in yoga and qigong and tai chi? It's all about breathing while you exercise. Breathing is how do we calm somebody if they have anxiety? They say, take a few deep breaths. I know I'm getting off track here, but all being said, all this stuff is ancient medicine, these are ancient medicine principles that have been practiced for thousands of years. I'm excited too because there's so many great other physicians and people bringing this stuff to the forefront. But I think the more we can get back to, hey, eating real food and just living our lives, not trying to be in the rat race to get to the top, but blessing others and, hey, taking time and just saying, I'm going to go to the park today. I'm going to take a vacation with my family. I'm going to, I'm not in a race to get to the top. I think that's another sort of, it's changing the way we think about our mindset of, I'm not trying to, I'm trying to live a fruitful, fulfilled life, but I'm not trying to get to the top.
Well, I'll tell you what, we were talking about that surgery I had. It was just like some minor dental surgery, but I was out for the count for 3 days. And during that time also, Lauren had to go on a trip. So she was gone. So I couldn't work, couldn't do anything. And so all I could literally do was just sit there and read. And honestly, I haven't been able to do that for 3 days in a long time with no stimulation from my wife. Not that I don't love you, honey, but no phone, no nothing, just sitting there. I came back so fired up and energetic because I had a time to sit down, unplug, and think and recenter myself. If that sounds, and I'm not one of those guys, but it was. I highly recommend. So now I want to do these things where you literally unplug. I'm gonna buy one of those burner phones, go off somewhere, have to take a map and leave the phone and just bring hard books and go somewhere to think for 2 or 3 days. I think it's so beneficial for people to do. We've never lived in a time where there's been this much stimulation from technology.
I love it. It's game changing.
Book, resource, or podcast that you can recommend to our audience that's brought you a lot of value.
Yeah, totally. So okay, and so this is someone else's stuff.
It could be your stuff too.
I have so many people I love. Gosh. I read a book recently called The Circle Maker that was awesome. It's goal set. It's thinking big with your life and that sort of thing. And I follow a lot of pastors. I love Stephen Furtick. Is one of my favorite guys that I listen to. Michael Hyatt is a guy I love. He teaches a lot on leadership. And so I'll throw out Michael Hyatt, man, because I just love that guy. His stuff is so good on goal setting and that sort of thing.
Love it. Where can everyone find you? Pimp yourself out. We will be on your podcast at the end of January, early February. We talk a lot about pregnancy, entrepreneurship, but where can everyone find you in the meantime on Instagram and Twitter and everything?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram at Dr. Josh Axe. You can check out, if you have any health problem, just search my name on Google, Dr. Axe, for hypothyroidism or leaky gut or whatever you might have going on. And I have a new book out. It's called The Collagen Diet. It's all about how to heal your gut, your hormones, have beautiful skin, using food as medicine. And that's on Amazon, bookstores nationwide. And I want to let you guys know, too, you guys are awesome. I know when I interviewed you guys, I was so impressed with, again, you guys are really fit and look good, but also I love the way you think. You guys have a real success mindset and mission mindset.
Appreciate that,
again, I just appreciate you guys having me on.
I feel really fucking good about myself because this whole interview I was drinking a collagen smoothie.
You should.
And a collagen bone broth. And your book, it's just all on brand.
You got bone broth, you got a green green something
You got
there.
the
Some
matcha.
sort of green
Matcha.
smoothie. Oh, matcha. Oh, that's something else I got to. I
I'm
love
doing
matcha.
good, right?
Fantastic.
I'm doing good. I cannot wait to read your entire book. I'm going to consume the whole thing, and then I'm going to bring home the bone broth. Is there a name for it? I know it's ancient nutrition.
Yeah, ancient nutrition. We have bone broth protein and multi-collagen protein, which is the best collagen out there. But I'll send you guys some to try.
We have them at the office.
great.
The girls have
Awesome.
all been eating them.
Oh,
I mean,
awesome.
listen, you put out a ton of content on your site. It's a really good resource. I was looking at it before. People need to go on and check this out. So we're going to link everything. Thank you for coming on, brother. It's been fun. We've had a couple hours now to do this podcast swap. So
come back anytime and we can do a whole podcast on tongue scraping and
I'd
why
love
everyone
that.
needs
That'd
to
be
do
awesome.
it. I got my whole family them for their stocking stuffers.
Awesome.
thank you, buddy.
Thanks, guys.